Alright everybody, so how we doing today? It's time to tackle what this channel was originally designed to talk about. Here we go. The Unglobalist, talking da-da-da-da about globalism. Now, the EU has a new batch of unelected leaders, but where is the democracy? It died, and they killed it. After 3 days of marathon negotiations and closed-door meetings, Europe has a fresh cast of newly unelected leaders. It's times like this when the completely undemocratic and disconnected nature of the EU is hardest to deny. It's also at times like this when you wonder, who could really blame the Brits for opting out? Not I! For all the problems Brexit has caused, and sitting here in Dublin, I'm aware that there are plenty, that is whoever wrote this article, some guy in Dublin, there's still a lot to be said for the idea of escaping the bureaucratic hellscape that is the European Union. European Council President Donald Tusk, that sounds too close to Trump, announced the chosen ones for the 4 top jobs on Twitter. I shall announce the chosen ones. Sounds like the wizard in a movie, you know? The chosen ones for the 4 top jobs on Twitter: a German defense minister, a French IMF chief, a Belgian prime minister, and a Spanish foreign minister. Oh, we're just so diverse. We have a German, a France, a Belgian, and a Spanish. Is there any doubt about where power lies in the EU and who it really serves? For a brief period on Tuesday evening, there was speculation online of impending doom as US VP Mike Pence canceled plans for an urgent meeting when Twitter report said the European Commission Security Council was also called for an emergency meeting. It started to sound serious. Maybe the world really was ending. However, the European Commission Security Council does not actually exist. And people were getting worked up over nothing. Well, this is the first I've heard of this. I knew the council existed, but now, or rather I should say I heard of the idea of it, but now we're hearing that it does not physically exist. Okay, article, you'd better explain yourself. For a solid 5 minutes, I too was convinced that it must be a real body. I had never heard of that. This is the EU we're talking about. One could be forgiven for confusion. EU leaders, much like their American counterparts, spend quite a lot of their time pontificating to the rest of the world about democracy. But where is the democracy in the process by which these new faces of the EU were selected? Oh yeah, no. I mean, he basically just appointed positions that would normally be elected to. Pretty tyrannical. And here's a tweet from Richard Wellings that I think pretty accurately sums up not only my feelings, but the feelings of many people within Europe, which is, some of these characters would struggle to pass a CRB check. It beggars belief that they have been selected as the EU's new leaders. And it shows the 4 candidates in rather unflattering photos saying, "Your new EU overlords." Of course, you can make all kinds of unflattering photos of people to make a point, like this. Right? Like, that would be pretty embarrassing, right? Well, here we go. I am not ashamed to embarrass myself on the internet. I will totally humiliate myself. Not embarrassed. Nope. There is none, of course. No votes were cast. No debates were held. No elections took place. It would be no exaggeration to suggest that the vast majority of Europeans hadn't even the foggiest notion that these switches were going to happen. When you have no say in something, it's impossible to feel connected to it. I hear you there. So who are the anointed ones? German Defense Minister Ursula von der Leyen will head the European Commission, an ally of Angela Merkel. Ally of Angela Merkel. She is a major proponent of an EU super army. Spanish Foreign Minister Josep Borrell Fontanelles. I almost wanted to say Fontanelles. That would certainly make it a little more exotic and spicy. Josep Borrell Fontanelles will run the EU's foreign policy. Christine Lagarde will move from the IMF to head of the European Central Bank. Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel will replace Tusk as European Council President, and no one elected any of them. Yeah. These sound like positions that should have been voted for, but for whatever reason someone saw fit to just sort of plop them down without asking. And what are the ultimate implications of this? To appoint positions like this without a vote? Well, I think the implications are quite clear. Being that the EU doesn't give a shit. They just want what they want, and if anyone objects, they're just not going to give a shit. What else do you call that if not a dictatorship? I mean, why do globalist microcosms like the EU and UN always lead to these sorts of things? Lack of representation of the people. Lack of respect for national sovereignty, sometimes even complete disregard of national sovereignty. Mass immigration, slow displacement of population. Why does this shit always happen? It's really quite simple. It happens because these people don't care. It's because they're not truly democratic. It is not a true democracy, not a true republic. It is a lie. It's smoke and mirrors, it's sleight of hand, it's whatever else you want to call it. It's horse shit. In March, French President Emmanuel Macron proposed the creation of a European agency for the protection of democracies, a common border force, a European asylum office, and a European Council for Internal Security. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And if all you have is unelected neoliberal bureaucrats, the solution to every problem looks like a new mega agency or supranational body, answerable to no one. Or if you're an American neoliberal, and the solution to every problem is throw money at it, which is arguably just as bad, if not worse. The brief furore over the fake European Commission Security Council was the perfect demonstration of how bloated and disconnected the EU really is from the citizens it's supposed to serve. How many Europeans, if you told them something happened at the European Commission Security Council, would actually be able to tell you right off the bat this council does not exist? Not many. Because they don't represent you people. You people in Europe are not represented by your so-called European Union. The only ones they represent are themselves. That is becoming rapidly apparent. The late Australian political thinker Leopold Kohr contended in his book The Breakdown of Nations that wherever something is wrong, something is too big. He believed all systems, regardless of the political ideology ruling them, would oppress people if they became too big. The answer to the problem, he argued, was not more unity, but division. The only alternative was that growth would feed growth and power would be increasingly concentrated away from the people until the system eventually collapsed. The British Empire, the Roman Empire, the Soviet Union, Kohr's philosophy has been proven time and time again. Yet our leaders still tell us that bigger is better, constant growth must be worshipped. True democracy in Europe can only be achieved in little states, Kohr wrote. We're a long way from that now. What was his name? Leopold Kohr? Okay, I'm going to have to read some of his work. That sounds really, really good. That sounds pretty awesome. I'm going to have to read some of that stuff. But I'm going to leave you with this. A tweet from Anne Wareham. You didn't vote them in. You can't vote them out. In fact, they can do pretty much whatever they like while living off hugely generous salaries and expense accounts funded by your taxes. EU democracy at its finest once again. Anyway, folks, Sorry, Europe. You're fucked.